Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Empowerment Panel for Black and Marine Science Week. My name is Jasmine Graham, and I am the project coordinator here at Mote Marine Laboratory for a diversity and inclusion grant called Marsi LACE, which stands for Marine Science Laboratory Alliance Center of Excellence. We're funded by the National Science Foundation's Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. I am also a marine biologist studying sharks, skates, and rays, also known as elasmobranchs, and I am one of the co-founders of Minorities in Shark Sciences, which is an organization dedicated to supporting women of color in shark science. We're really excited to have you today, and we want to celebrate Black marine scientists around the world. This is why we have Black and Marine Science Week. For those of you that have not been attending any of the Black and Marine Science events, I definitely recommend that you visit the Black and Marine Science website and check out some of the really great events that we have. All of the events have been recorded and are on the Black and Marine Science YouTube page, so you can go back and watch them. We have some exciting events for today. In addition to the empowerment panel, we have at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, the Skype a Scientist Live with Jada Elcock, who will be talking about what is marine science? What does it mean to do marine science? We also on our website have a slew of resources for teachers and parents to do with their young people. We have a lot of K through 12 activities there on our website, so feel free to check those out. And if you're not following us on social media, you can look for Black and Marine Science on both Twitter and Instagram, and we'll be posting things there throughout this week. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm really excited to talk to some really special guests. I want to kick it off and let Amanda Hodo introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Hodo and I'm an aquarium biologist 3 at Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium. And I've been here for about 6 years now, and what I do currently is, aside from being responsible for the short and long-term care of several exhibits, I also manage the Aquarium Conservation Laboratory, which is the aquarium's multi-species aquaculture lab. So I spend lots of hours in that lab taking care of the aquarium's baby fish and invertebrates. So it's a total blast.
Awesome.
Every other week too, I also get to dive in our 135,000 gallon shark exhibit, which is very fun. We're just in there doing maintenance and cleaning, and then I also get to interact with some of the animals in there. So we have a Goliath grouper that lives in the shark exhibit, and it loves attention from the divers. So he'll actually follow you around while you're trying to work, while you're scrubbing a wall, and just stay close by until you give her a little bit of attention. So it's really great interacting with the grouper and with the other groupers and other fish that are in the exhibit. And I get to help with shark training a couple of times a week. So we actually have target trained our sharks, and they will come to the target to receive their food, and they learn which target they're supposed to go to, which, and that they'll get their nice tasty fish reward there. So I guess I'll tell you guys a little bit about my background as well. I was born and raised in Chicago and had a lot of different interests, so it took some time before I kind of figured out that marine science was the path for me. So I watched tons of animal shows as a kid and thought that I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I quickly found out when I was about 11 years old that I was allergic to pretty much everything. So that was unfortunate, and I kind of had to switch gears a little bit. But what I think directed me to the path of marine science is the fact that I lived very close to a major aquarium in the United States. I lived really close to the Shed Aquarium. And I started doing programs with the Shed when I was in high school. So I did a couple of programs that were more of like an intro to marine science, learning about some basic terms and species that they had on display at the aquarium, and that really piqued my interest. And later on, I did a program called High School Marine Biology, where I basically won a scholarship to study marine science research on a research vessel in the Bahamas with other teens for a week. So that was incredible, an amazing opportunity. And I definitely had my moment when I was on that trip where I was like, okay, I think that this is for me. I think that this is the path I want to go in. But little did I know, marine science is a very, very broad uh, field. There's so much underneath the umbrella of marine science because there's aquarium sciences, there's marine science education, there's research, there's, all kinds of different paths that you can take in marine science. So I was really trying to decide, did I want to work in an aquarium or did I want to do marine biology research? And so to help figure that out, I did more programs when I was in college. I did a couple of National Science Foundation research experiences for undergraduates. And then I also did a couple of internships at aquariums, working in aquarium sciences. And I would say that doing these experiences, doing these internships really, really helped me narrow down my interest and ultimately decide that aquarium biology was for me. And then I graduated with a biology degree and made the decision to go with aquarium sciences. And while I was completing a few internships after graduation, I actually got hired to Moat, and I've been here ever since. So it's been a lovely 6 years at Moat. Is anyone else really excited for today? I'm really excited. I really enjoy talking to other scientists in the field of marine biology, because I feel like we have a lot in common, even though we all have taken different paths. And I just really, really enjoy talking with other scientists and also talking with young people and learning more about what you guys' interests are. And I love sharing all that I can about the field of aquarium science and marine science, and telling people about what this career path is like.
All right. So we're going to let Dr. Jeanette Davis, speak a little bit more about her background. Unfortunately, she's on the phone and we're not able to see her, but we would love to hear her story and how she got here.
Okay, thanks again for this opportunity. As said, I'm Dr. Jeanette Davis, and I pretty much started my journey as a marine microbiologist. And, that's microbiology is just a fancy way of saying studying the things in the ocean that we can't see without a microscope. I pretty much grew up loving science. I absolutely love science, and I think I've always kind of had the qualities and the characteristics of a scientist, in that I was always asking questions, very inquisitive, and loved being outdoors, playing in nature. I was the kid that was always gathering plants and playing in dirt and playing with ants and bugs. So I think it just kind of came quite naturally for me. And then, throughout school, I just found that I always gravitated towards the sciences. And it wasn't until, I was applying for colleges that I thought, okay, I love science. So what do you do with that? And initially, I thought about being a medical doctor or a pharmacist, which are both, a type of applied scientists. So they are the people who kind of take the basic research and apply it to a particular problem of medicine or, the human body. But I didn't really have the language of saying that I wanted to be like a research scientist because as a Black woman, I didn't grow up seeing people who looked like me in the field. But with all of that said, I went to Hampton University for undergrad. They had an amazing marine science department. And that's when I pretty much discovered my passion for ocean science. And I learned that studying the ocean is to study a variety of sciences. So I loved chemistry, and I had to take, several different types of chemistry, a lot of basic sciences, but, meteorology because it's connected to the ocean, and botany, and, a lot of different sciences. And so that pretty much started my journey being a marine scientist. And I jumped in right away, right after my freshman year. I lived on a boat for a month. Sailed the Chesapeake Bay and learned so much about Native Americans and African Americans' contribution to the Bay. And from there, I pretty much interned until, I went into a PhD program where I focused more on the small things in the ocean that you couldn't see. But I had a chance to combine that with my love of medicine and ended up doing my project on marine drug discovery. So yeah, that's pretty much my journey in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate, how you talked about the journey that you had. We had a question from a middle school educator for both Jeanette and Amanda. This educator says, is there something you wish your middle school science teacher would have known or done to make your path toward a marine science career more clear? And let's go to Amanda first.
Sure. So I would say a middle school teacher, I would have loved to have seen actual scientists, seen what seen what a chemist looks like, seen what a physicist looks like, and hopefully present scientists of color as well, so that students of all backgrounds and stuff can see themselves in science. So that would have been really, really amazing for me. I think that can be really, really impactful, is actually visually seeing someone that looks like you and maybe thinking, oh, okay, well, then that is a possibility. I think that would have been very, very helpful to me when I was a child.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's hear from Jeanette.
Yeah, one, thank you for the educator who asked that question, because I think that is so important and valuable. Just as an educator, period. I think we, focus a lot on what the text says, which is fine, but it's very different from like teaching in a lecture-based environment versus making science interactive. And so getting to what Amanda was saying, I totally echo everything that she said. I think it's important to have representation in terms of science. And, as I said in my journey, I didn't necessarily, I couldn't have said that I wanted to be a marine biologist because I didn't consider it as a science because I didn't see anyone who looked like me, or I wasn't really exposed to a variety of sciences. And I know that, at some point we're going to kind of talk about the book that I recently authored, Science is Everywhere, Science is for Everyone. And it was created for that exact purpose, to one, connect young people with sciences that are all around them. So if you're like me growing up and you like plants, then you could be a botanist. But I could have never said I wanted to be a botanist because I didn't have the language to say I wanted to be a botanist. Or if you like animals growing up, that's a zoologist. But I didn't have the language to say I wanted to be a zoologist. So the book is really about connecting kids with the everyday things that they encounter and things that they observe, from cooking, which is chemistry, and putting the name to the sciences that they actually observe and partake in. But two, adding characters of color so that they can see representation. They can have the language of science and they can also see representation. And so, yes, I agree with Amanda. And for all educators, I would encourage you to have representation, have the language, but most importantly, allow science to be interactive and engaging and fun to really get young people involved and excited about it.
Great. Yes, I definitely agree with that. I didn't know what marine science was until I think I was 15, and I went to a summer camp and they taught us about marine science, and that was my first time learning that you could study science in the ocean and that could be a job and you could get paid to do that. And that's really where my passion started. Before that, I said that I wanted to be a veterinarian because that's the only thing I knew that would work with animals. So having that language is definitely important. We have another question here. Um, it says, "My name is Addison and I am 12 years old. I am wondering, do you know any youth groups for that are really good for little girls like me?" We'll go with Jeanette first.
Um, so there is a group that I have been a mentor in. It's called Girls in Tech. And it really does include all sciences and technology. But that is a national program. So I would encourage you that's one particular program that you can be involved in, Girls in Tech. There's also Girls Who Code. And even though that is about coding, a marine science, a part of marine science. Actually, I said I was a microbiologist, and as a modern day microbiologist, I don't carry around a microscope to study the things I can't see. The way that I study those things is through what we call molecular tools, and molecular just means molecules. So DNA, RNA, proteins, genes, those are all molecules that all living things have, including the living things in the ocean. And all of those things are codes for life. And the way that I identify or study the things that I can't see is I look at their codes, their DNA, their genes. And that's through something called bioinformatics. So that's a type of coding. And I'm making that link because sometimes some of the groups may have a certain name and you may not see the connection to marine science, but there definitely is a connection. So Girls Who Code is another one. And I would also encourage you to just talk to your science teacher or your, I don't know if you maybe have an advisor or some sort in school, but pretty much talk to your teachers, and your school is definitely a resource because perhaps there are local opportunities where you are. But I do know Girls in Tech and Girls Who Code are some that you could probably look into.
Great. Amanda, do you have any organizations you know of?
I do. So I discovered a colleague of mine created a program called Ocean Gems. And she created the program several years ago, but the point of the program is to connect young people that are interested in marine science, particularly those in underrepresented communities, and connect them with marine scientists and scientists in general that are basically working in a field that they're potentially interested in. So I would highly recommend you check out Danny Washington's organization, Ocean Gems.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. We're going to get to a couple more questions in a second, but I want to go ahead and bring in Alex. We have on the line Alex Troutman. Alex, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Hi, yes, my name is Alex Troutman. I'm a wildlife biologist. So far, I have worked with sea turtles and as an endangered species observer aboard a dredging ship. So as an endangered species observer, I basically just made sure that sea turtles and marine mammals were been kept safe and stayed away from while they're digging up. So a dredging ship actually digs up sand and either throws it on the beach after hurricanes, or they dig up channels to widen them for shipping, or for ships to come through and deliver goods. So I'm basically there to make sure that the turtles are protected and the marine mammals are protected. And now I'm currently in grad school working with seaside sparrows and insects. I'm looking to see if seaside sparrows adults are making a trade-off, and when they're selecting a nesting site for their diets, the adults' diets, or if they're selecting a nesting site based on the diets of their offspring that they will have.
Great. Thank you for sharing. So while we have everyone here, I want to just ask everyone to kind of share if you could give some advice to your younger self, what would you tell them? And let's kick it back to Amanda first.
Okay. I would say the advice I would give would be to dig in, because I had a lot of interests when I was younger, and I had, some things I was more interested in others. For example, I was very, very interested in animals from a young age. But I also partially wanted to be a professional soccer player. And then I wanted to be a dolphin trainer. And I wanted to be a pediatrician because I thought I liked babies. So I had all of these interests, and instead of really like honing in on marine science and even animals, I continued to kind of like spread around and do a little bit of this and do a little bit of this. But my advice would be, if you find something that you really like, then go ahead and dig in. Like, go ahead and take that time to really learn the ins and outs. If you're interested in animals, what animals are you interested in? If you have a couple of favorite species, awesome. Do a little bit of research. Learn about their life cycle. Maybe learn about their scientific name. Maybe learn about the habitats that they live in, because this will only help you in the future. I can honestly say that when I've done interviews, and right now I'm actually the intern coordinator for the interns that come into the aquarium for fish and inverts. So I can honestly say that a lot of the questions that I ask in those interviews are about the person's interests. So have a good idea of what you're interested in. And if you know, then go ahead and dig in. Get those little details, because then you can pull those out in situations like interviews or conversations with scientists that are doing what you're interested in. And then you can really kind of let them know that you're in it. Like, you clearly took the time to learn more because you're genuinely interested, and it'll show when you pull those factoids out and when you pull those tidbits and you're excited about it. So go ahead and dig into something if you're really interested in it.
Great, thank you. Such great advice. Let's go to Jeanette. What advice would you give your younger self?
That's a great question. I think it's advice that I constantly give myself even today. And that is, it's okay to be an exploration and to, just be open-minded. Marine science, and I mean, this is a fact that, most people know, but I always remind people that, the ocean covers a little over 70% of the planet. So it is such a important and incredible resource. It's the largest and oldest habitat on our planet. There's so much exploration and so much that you can study that, continue to be a student of the ocean, like continue to be open-minded about the possibilities. And I mentioned I went to Hampton University for undergrad, which is a historically Black college. And my degree was in marine and environmental science. I still had an interest in medicine and had no idea, if it wasn't for my first internship where I ended up meeting my PhD advisor, that you could get medicines from the ocean. In fact, when you look at penicillin, which, comes from a fungus, and a lot of medicines that we use, their chemical structure usually comes from something in nature. And I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't open to getting on a boat and figuring out where that journey would take me. And now professionally, I'm an ocean policy advisor, which means that I talk more about the ocean than I'm actually doing research on the ocean. But I get to work with people who make decisions about the ocean and managing the ocean. I, sometimes get to talk to members of Congress about the ocean and investments in our ocean, which is amazing. And so I'm saying all of this to say that it's important to be knowledgeable about the ocean, but it's also important to understand that it's so immense and there are so many issues to solve that you have to have a willingness to work with a variety of people to solve the problems and be open-minded about that.
Great. Let's go to Alex. Alex, what advice would you give?
I would give my younger self the advice of being unapologetically you. Like growing up, like always had a love for nature, and the outdoors. But as I grew older into my teens and eventually in high school, I kind of put that on the back burner and hit it. Like I was into sports, so I had that as the forefront. And then when I went home, I would go back to looking at Nat Geo or looking at zoo books and these nature documentaries, and not really having my true identity of wanting to be a wildlife biologist, wanting to work with marine life and sea turtles as the forefront. I would just keep it as I'm Alex. I play football. I like to eat food, but I never said, "Oh, I'm Alex. I aspire to be a wildlife biologist. I want to work outdoors for my entire life." It was just do this, and this is what you get to see of me. But now looking back on it, like being a wildlife biologist was something I always wanted to do, and loving nature and loving these animals was what made me who I am. So I shouldn't have hid it. So now I would definitely say be unapologetically you. If people don't like it, then it sucks for them. Like I can do all the things I love and still have these friends, even though it's in a different atmosphere or field that they like. They might not understand all these animal facts that I'm throwing at them or talking about, but they still understand who I am and know that this is a part of me. So they're not going to just throw me to the side. So that's one advice I would give myself. And the other advice I would give myself is don't be afraid to explore. All of my jobs that have been, except for one or two of them, have been actually based here in Georgia. My other jobs have taken me across to Wisconsin, down to Texas, in the Gulf of Mexico, and even all the way to Borneo for other previous jobs that I've had. So while I've been a wildlife biologist and I'm from Georgia, most of my career has not been in Georgia yet. I recently just moved back to Georgia to come and to graduate school, and this is going to be the longest time I've been in Georgia. For the last 7 years, I'll be here for at least 2 years during graduate school. When the previous 7 years of my life, I've been spent everywhere else but Georgia. So don't be afraid to move around and explore things outside of your state, outside of your town. There's so many opportunities out there, but you have to go find them. You have to go to them. They're not always going to come to you.
Great. That's really great advice. Yeah, it's definitely important in whatever you do to be unapologetically you. You heard it here, folks. Science is cool. Being outdoors is cool. don't let anyone make you feel like you can't enjoy being outside or doing science. All right, so we have a question specifically about degrees. So we have one question that asks, what degree level do you need to acquire to get into the field? And then we have similarly a follow-up question, whenever people are looking at going into graduate school and things like that, what advice would you give to someone that doesn't really know what specific area of marine science they want to go into, but they know they're interested in pursuing it? Let's go to Jeanette first.
Okay, so starting with degree, I would so I have a PhD and I have a bachelor's degree. I did not get a master's. And your bachelor's degree in marine science, for me, I always distinguish it with marine and environmental science, not necessarily marine biology. So it wasn't just studying life in the ocean. It was really more like an earth science type of degree, because there was a lot of like marine sciences, marine biology, of course, but then there was like geology and meteorology and environmental science, so it was like a holistic approach to studying the earth, but most of it being the ocean, of course. And then I went from that to a PhD program. And oftentimes people get a master's first because they do not know what they want to do. For me, again, like I mentioned, after my freshman year, and I spent a month on a boat and met the person who did drug discovery from the ocean, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And when I interned in that lab, it was at the University of Maryland, Center for Environmental Sciences. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I thought I had to apply for a master's because that's the next step. And, I talked to my advisor, who basically told me that the project that I was working on was not a master's level project. So I'm saying that to say there are some projects where it will take 2 to 3 years, which is like kind of master's level. And then there are some projects that are more long term, and trying to find out if a sea slug versus what is eating versus the bacteria that lives on the sea slug is producing an anti-cancer compound, which was my project. It was not a 2-year project. It took 6 years. And so one distinction is to just think about what is your goal? Masters literally is about mastering a technique, coming into a project that is kind of already done foundationally, and you're adding on to that. You're pretty much putting in that last piece of the puzzle. A PhD is more so you are expected to contribute a bit differently in terms of publishing. So you are doing the field work, you're executing, you're writing the publications. There's an expectation for you to publish your findings. And then there's just more available to you with the PhD in marine science. One traditional track obviously is academia. So if you are looking to like have your own lab, and if you are thinking to ask questions and get money to address those questions, that's more of a like PhD level. If you're looking to be like a technician, or you are interested in just doing the research, you're not necessarily looking to ask the questions or create the idea behind it, but you want to execute, that's a little more of a master's level. So just to kind of make that distinction, but it really is up to the individual. The one advice I would say is that your relationship with your advisor is probably more important than just the degree, because this is the person that you're going to be spending a lot of time with, in that facility a lot. So you want to also think about the program that you're going into, or the lab that you're going into. What is the overall environment and atmosphere there, because you want to like it and you want to enjoy it. And that also will help you determine if you want to be there for 2 to 3 years versus 4 to 6. So yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much. Let's go to Alex next.
Yes. So for me, I would start off by saying, like, right now, I've been getting other positions without having a master's. Right now, I am working on master's, but I have just a bachelor's degree. So that's all you really need to at least get your foot in the door into this field. I came back to get a master's because I wanted to go farther than just being at the level I was. And most of the jobs that I were getting were taking me away from home, and also they were temporary to seasonal jobs. So a season usually lasts a couple of months, or some of the term jobs I had was 1 or 2 years. There wasn't anything really available that was going to be long term for more than 2 or 3 years. So I know that getting a master's would help with that. And then also, this allowed me to kind of refine what I want to do as far as my wildlife biologist role. So that's why I kind of came back to get a master's. And with my master's program, I actually am designing my own experiment and getting funding for myself. Um, so with my experiment, I came in, didn't my lab that I came in had an experiment that he wanted to do, but it wasn't really fitting the ideal that I had in mind. So I was able to work with him to actually come up with my own experiment in the marine field. So like I said, I'm working with with seaside sparrows. They're a bird that's in the tidal marshes of South Georgia. So the tidal marsh is a marsh that has brackish water, so a mix between seawater and also fresh water. And the tidal marsh is based on tide, so the water comes and floods the actual marsh twice a day. So I'm going out there and looking at this bird and seeing what it's eating. Whereas my original project that my professor was thinking of having me do was looking at a freshwater system, but I knew I wanted to do something more marine-like. So this is my plan to get to that area. So I would say, like I said before, like you don't really need a master's degree to work in my field, but if you want to do something long term, it's better to have a master's degree to get those long term roles and permanent positions. There are some outliers where you can find a permanent position that's working in the marine field in a marine field with just a bachelor's degree. But for what I wanted to do, that wasn't the case. So excuse me. So I that's why I chose to get this a master's degree. And then how did I find out like what I wanted to do? It's really about getting the experience. Like I had worked with many different species, butterflies, bats, and sea turtles, and other species. But in my head, like I always wanted to do something in the marine field. So once I got the chance to work with sea turtles, it kind of brought me back home. Like, okay, this is what you've been going to school for. This is where you want it to be. So how can we build upon this? So how can we build upon where you working with sea turtles now? So now that I have that sea turtle experience, I'm working towards learning more about the marine environment, the marine systems, to eventually be able to work full time in this field. So hopefully, after I finish my master's, that's what I'll be doing.
Excellent. All right, let's hear from Amanda.
So I have a biology degree, an undergrad biology degree from Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa. So in Iowa, surrounded by corn and cows, not so much oceans or lakes or anything like that. So what I ended up doing is spending my summers doing programs, as I mentioned, that took me out of Iowa. So I did a program in San Diego, I did a program in Charleston, and then I came back to Chicago, did an internship with the Shed Aquarium. I did an internship with Moat, which brought me to Sarasota, Florida. So I started in Chicago and ended up in Florida and with a biology degree. And that's really a degree that is perfectly fine for my career path. So when you're working in the field of aquarium biology, you don't need a marine biology specific undergraduate degree. As pretty much as long as it's science related, you're okay. So my coworkers have a variety of different degrees, chemistry degrees, uh, biology degrees, environmental science degrees. They're all science related for the most part for my field. And I actually do have a couple of coworkers that do have master's degrees, but it's not necessarily required to get into my field. So the majority of us have undergraduate degrees. And what I've learned in the last 6 years has really prepared me for this job. So it's more of a like on the job specific learning opportunity. So when I was attending Grinnell in Iowa, I didn't really have, well, I say that I didn't really have, but I had 0 marine biology classes, which is why it was really important for me to get off of campus and go explore other parts of the country that were close to water where I could more easily learn more about marine environments. So getting that graduate degree was crucial for entering the field of aquarium biology. But as I mentioned, I do have colleagues that have graduate degrees. And in regards to figuring out what I wanted to do, it was doing those internships and those research experiences that really helped me. While I really enjoyed the projects that I was doing in those research experiences, they kind of helped me figure out that I kind of wanted to pivot and go more in the direction of aquarium sciences. So the good thing about internships and summer programs is that you can learn a lot about what you do like and what you're passionate about, and you can also simultaneously have them be useful for helping you figure out what may not be so perfect for you. So highly recommend doing internships and volunteer experiences if they're relevant, because that can help you narrow down your interests.
Thanks. All right, so we're getting close to time here, but we have 2 questions that kind of go hand in hand with each other. So one question is, what has been the hardest thing you've done in your career? And on the other side of that, what's been the most enjoyable or most memorable experience you've had in your career? And we'll start off with Alex.
I'll start off with one of the hardest things is I would say probably like I love it, but also it's one of the hardest things is been away from family so long and so often. Like I said, many of my positions are 10 plus hours away from Georgia. And sometimes they're in places that are considered backcountry where I don't have cell phone reception. So I would go weeks at a time before I actually talk to my family. So that would be one of the hardest things about my field, as that's not the case for everyone. And then I would say one of the most memorable things is my first time actually like seeing a wild sea turtle. Like I worked at an aquarium before, and I like seen sea turtles in the aquarium and pictures. But the first time I actually got to see a wild sea turtle, it was amazing. Like I was, as part of my job, I was driving around the beach, looking for sea turtles that were coming up to nest. And it was early in the morning, and I just seen an object that was coming out the water, but at the time my mind didn't recognize what it was. So I was just like, oh, like that rock is kind of moving. But I was like, is that really a rock moving? I wasn't sure. And then like I kept seeing it move, and I was like, that's a sea turtle. So like I got super excited. And then like I was riding with a volunteer, and I was like, "Yo, stop! That's a sea turtle." And like I got to watch it come all the way out the water, dig a nest, lay the eggs, and then go back into the water. And in between its laying its nest and going back into the water, I got to like take samples from it, measure it, and then make sure I apply tags and watch it go back into the water. So it was just like so amazing to see that whole thing. Like I not only got to see a sea turtle, but I got to see it nest, and like so many people don't get to see that. So that's one of my most memorable things is just like the beauty of seeing this whole complete process of this sea turtle nesting event. Then like it never gets old too. Like I've seen I don't even know how many turtles nesting now, and every time it's still like the same like admiration of seeing this beautiful creature laying a nest and going back into the water. Like so, I just symbolize the nest as like starting a new journey of laying eggs and passing on the torch. Much like when I retire, I hope to pass on the torch to the future generations. So that was my most memorable thing so far in the field.
Awesome. Man, that's a cool story. I've never seen a sea turtle nest. I got to add that to my bucket list. Let's go to Amanda.
So I would say probably the hardest thing that I have encountered in my career would probably be honestly an ongoing battle with imposter syndrome. So I definitely have kind of been fighting against that the last several years, and I think it partially stems from not seeing scientists that looked like me growing up. So when I did have interest in science, I wasn't 100% sure that that was a possibility, especially once I figured out marine science. It was still difficult to find scientists that looked like me, and they were out there. It wasn't as readily available. And I think it also partially stems from the fact that I went to a school where there were no marine biology classes. And then I went into a marine biology field, and I kind of had this ultimate feeling that I was worried I was unprepared. So when I got into the field and I had coworkers that had marine biology degrees and had taken several marine science classes and already knew all of these marine biology terms and topics and stuff that I didn't necessarily know, I started to question whether I deserved to be there, whether I deserved to have that position that I had applied for and gotten. And I started to doubt myself. And I think that I constantly battle with this and thinking about my place and feeling like I belong. So I would say the battle with imposter syndrome is real. And that is definitely one of the hardest things that I've encountered in my career. And it has some big impacts. I have a hard time advocating for myself sometimes and thinking that I deserve things. So sometimes I don't, I'm afraid to apply. I'm afraid to fail. So I think that that's definitely been a big challenge for me, and I'm working on it. And it's been better, but it's an ongoing struggle. And I would say probably one of my favorite parts of my job is definitely breeding. So it's hard to describe, but for me, there is just something so magical about seeing something lay eggs and care for those eggs, and then seeing those eggs develop, watching those eggs hatch, and then watching larvae grow up. I mean, for me, there's really nothing that compares because, for example, I have one of the animals that I'm breeding right now is neon gobies, and so when they hatch, oh yeah, look, neon gobies. So those neon gobies are at least 3 days old. So when they get to 3 days, they start to develop their eyes and really start to develop inside the egg. And there's something so amazing about watching them hatch because they come out of the egg and they're virtually colorless. They have a little bit of color here and there on their backs, and then you can see the reflection of their eyes, but they really don't have much color. And they grow fast. I mean, they double in size within probably about a week and a half. And it's really amazing to just watch that transformation. And I'm someone who gets very excited about the littlest changes with them. So I come in and I'm like so excited. I'm like, wow, look how big you are. And then I come in the next day and they have like a little bit of a stripe somewhere, and I lose my mind. I get so excited. And then, a couple days later, they start getting a little bit of blue color. And then I get super excited all over again. And with neon gobies, after about 4 weeks or so, they go through a complete metamorphosis where they go from swimming in the water column to basically settling and becoming miniature versions of their parents. And overnight, it's almost overnight that it happens. So those are my favorite moments, is when I come in and the first one of a batch has gone through metamorphosis, and I just get so excited, and I like call my coworkers in. I'm sure they're very sick of me because every time I have babies in there, I'm always dragging them in the lab, like, come look at this, this is bigger, this one went through metamorphosis, this one has doubled in size. So really that's definitely my favorite part of the job, is watching the babies develop and helping them grow, and then hopefully sharing them with my coworkers as well as other zoos and aquariums. So sometimes when I'm able to send those babies to other zoos and aquariums, and then that lessens the pressures of aquariums on wild populations. So that's definitely the best part of my job, is being part of a larger conservation project too.
Awesome. All right, last but not least, Dr. Jeanette.
Yeah, so, I'm excited for the excitement on the panel. Like, I was just listening to, you guys talking about your stories and the things that you currently study, and it sounds so exciting and amazing. I would say one of the challenges in the field, kind of, reiterating what Amanda said, just kind of, as a Black woman in this field, creating a sense of belonging can be challenging. I think that I've gotten a lot better at it over the years by just, cultivating community. But it is something that you have to be diligent about, because we are often in spaces and places where, for me, I'm usually the youngest, sometimes the only woman and person of color. And so that can be challenging in terms of just creating a sense of belonging. And, I'm grateful that things like Black and Marine Science Week now exist to continue to cultivate community and share our stories and our experiences. But that can be a challenge. And then also I would add, I got excited about you guys talking about your story, because in my current position, I'm not doing as much field research. And that is sometimes can be a challenge. I made the decision that I would be more impactful in the, ocean policy arena. And so it allows me, like I said, to actually talk to decision makers, because oftentimes decisions are made about conservation. You, as a field biologist, you're solving a problem. In a lab, you're solving a problem, but how that information is used in the larger context of ocean and its resource and management is a completely different process. And so what I found is that many scientists are doing the science and the research, but they're not necessarily making decisions on how that research is used to make decisions, broader decisions. And so for me, I found it would be more impactful to be in those rooms and spaces with people who are making laws and legislation and decisions, and who have multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar budgets on how we are investing in science. And so that, on the flip side, has been rewarding for me. So although I do miss sometimes being out in the field, it has been rewarding to be in certain spaces, to travel. I don't remember how many countries I have traveled to. The only thing I can say is South America is the only continent that I have not been on to talk about ocean and policy and just international policy, because what we do in the U.S. impacts other countries. And so I guess overall, the most exciting thing is being in this space to truly have an impact and to have those larger, broader international discussions about our ocean and our resources. And then lastly, I would definitely say my children's science book. I created this to provide what I needed growing up as a young Black girl who loved science and didn't have the language of science. And so that is definitely something that is rewarding, and there is more to come. Next year is another book that focuses exclusively on just oceanography and marine science, but I wanted young people to first make the connection between science and the things that they do every day that is related to science, and letting them know that it's everywhere and for everyone. And I'll stop there.
Great. That makes an excellent segue. Speaking of Dr. Jeanette Davis's book, we actually are going to be doing a giveaway for a free copy of Science is Everywhere, Science is for Everyone. And the way that you can try to win this giveaway is, if you're out there and you were watching this panel, please send us an email with a video explaining what you learned and what you found most interesting about the panelists. And we will be picking one lucky person at the end of the week, at the end of Black and Marine Science Week, to get a free copy of Science is Everywhere, Science is for Everyone. So be sure to send us those videos, tell us what you learned, what you found most interesting about our panelists, and get the chance to win this amazing book. So we're just about wrapping up here. I want to thank everyone for coming and for having great questions. Thanks again to our panelists. This will be available on YouTube and will be recorded. So if you missed part of it, don't worry about it. It will be coming at you via YouTube in just a little bit. And I want to thank all of you for supporting and advocating for Black marine scientists. Be sure to check out our website, Black and Marine Science, and be sure to follow us on social media. You can also follow Marsilase on social media and visit our website to find more about how we work to recruit, support, and retain minority students in marine science. And also, we'll do a plug for my organization, Minorities in Shark Sciences. Feel free to check that website out as well. We are also on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And please tune in to our next event, which has already started. This is the Skype a Scientist Live, so you can pop on into that if you just can't get enough of marine science. Feel free to check that out. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.